Hey crafters, Big D here, and today we're talking about some really small bits of terrain. Bases for your figures. So this isn't going to be a really high-end terrain. The stuff I'm going to teach you is not going to be something you're going to put on your crystal brush miniature, and this is not something you're going to do that's going to be on a par with what you see on Games Workshop site. This is just a little bit, a small piece of terrain to make your board a little better. Now, if you're fine with your bases being solid black with the black ring and the black top, that's okay too. That's fine. I got nothing for you here. We'll see you next week. But if you want to see how I dress up my figures just a little bit, stick around. I'm going to show you some basic, simple techniques that anybody can do, and will make your figures really pop on the table. And again, that's what it's all about. Epicing your board and epicing your table. So, let's hit the crafting table and see what we got. Hey crafters, so for this piece I've actually got an extra pair of hands helping me today. The Kender's got littler hands than I do, and I need you to be able to see what's going on. So when we're talking about the minis that I'm talking about for this kind of tutorial, I'm talking about three kinds of minis. The first kind is the pre-painted minis that already have a base on them. These are already pre-painted, there's not a lot really to do with them. We're just looking at doing something on their base to dress them up a little bit. Second kind of mini we're talking about is the one that's pre-painted or not pre-painted, but doesn't have a base of any sort on it. And these are the ones that we're going to be affixing straight to a base. So just a pair of feet. Sometimes they have little slotted bases. We can take the slotted base off, but we'll talk about that when we get there. The third kind of mini are the ones that you see with like Reaper Bones and their Chrono and the other ones where they already have a base on them that's got some texture, but it doesn't really conform to a size or shape. It's always per figure. So we're going to base all three kinds of these figures, and the reason we have two of that sapling figure is because I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. Again, this is not super fancy. This is not things you're going to be presenting at Crystal Brush or anything like that. This is just to dress up your table a little bit. Okay, so here we are with a pre-based, pre-painted miniature. This is the least amount of work, but it's pretty easy. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our brush and get it a little wet, and then take Mod Podge, and this is an old junky brush. We're going to take full strength Mod Podge, and we're going to cover the top of the base. Okay, so now we're going to take our sifted rocks. Now these are from construction sand. This is a box of sifted rocks. I basically took some flour sifter, and we're going to take 2 or 3 interesting ones and just kind of put them on the base. And this is entirely to taste and your own artistic interpretation. Alright, now we're going to take our grit. Now here's the thing, I'm using play sand with a little bit of construction sand mixed in. The grit doesn't matter. If you're going to paint over it, you can use whatever grit you want. If you're not going to paint over it, you want to use, go look at a modeling store or someplace where they sell trains, and they've got things called ballast, which are different kinds of grit. You can get different colors. I'm not going to be painting this one. I kind of like this dusky look. But look, it puts a little bit of grit look on there with a couple pebbles. And when we come back after it dries, we're going to put some flock on there. And there you go, based. Okay, for the pre-based minis, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the minis to the base. Because things don't normally adhere to metal very well, there are a couple things that do. Hot glue happens to be one of them. So we're going to take a little tiny spot of hot glue and put it right in the middle of the washer. And because metal's a great conductor of heat, they're going to cool pretty much right away. So now they're adhered. So there's two ways we can do this. The first one, a little more expensive, but it does get you some really good results because it ends up being rock hard and really nice, is using Miliput. Miliput's a two-part epoxy. We've taken two small pieces of each kind. We've mixed them together. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to fill out the rest of that base with little pieces of it so that it matches up on the circle. And now you can see, with the Miliput on, you've got a really nice base. When it dries, it takes about 24 hours to really set permanently. I would wait till that 24 hours is out, and then we just grit it up just like we did the plastic base. Now, Miliput's not really expensive, but it is sometimes a hard material to get a hold of. So in that case, I'm going to also show you how I do it when I don't have access to Miliput. And that's the glue gun. You're going to do this the same way you're looking at the Miliput, but you're just going to use a little bit of a bead going around, and because it cools pretty much right away after touching the metal, you can do like 1 or 2 passes and it will nicely build up. And again, because you're going to be putting grit on top of this, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just want to have it a nice sloping piece that fits over the edge of your washer. Okay then, let it cool, give it a coat of Mod Podge, give it your grit, give it your pebbles if you're going to do, and it's ready for priming. Now the leftover piece, you can do a lot of things with it. It's a nice sculptable clay. Make rocks, make different kinds of shapes and pieces out of it. I've made a number of mushrooms out of it. You'll see a later tutorial on my fungal stuff I'm building, but it's a perfectly good material. Use it for stuff. Don't let it go to waste. For this next set of bases, we're going to use something that not a lot of crafters I see use, but I love because of its durability, its paintability, and its sculptability. We are talking about polymer clay, commonly known as Sculpy. Michael's and Joann's have knockoff house brand versions. That's what I use, just the cheapest stuff available. Since we're going to be painting it, I grab, if there's something on sale, I'll grab a piece of it and go. So, with working with Sculpy, it's a little sticky on certain surfaces. So, I put down tin foil because we're going to have to bake it afterwards, and it doesn't stick too bad to it. So what we're going to do is you warm it up by massaging it with your hands, as you see here, and then put it down on your tin foil, and you're going to want to roll it flat. You need something kind of hard, mush it out with your hands, and then you want it fairly thin, like maybe 1/4 of an inch at most. So once you've got it to a nice enough size, you've got it out there, finding some sort of rolling pin. If you have a marble or stone rolling pin in your house, a nice plastic roller, a nice piece of PVC will work, or in this case, we've got a glass jar. So the idea is that you really kind of muscle it down and you're rolling this out fairly thin. Now there are tools to do this as well. I actually own one because I do a lot of work in Sculpy. So if you actually can get, they call it a Sculpy thinner or a Sculpy press, there's a couple different names for it. It's basically the same kind of tool that a pasta press is. And it just makes it nice, thin, long, and flat. Now, once you have your Sculpy, there's a couple different ways you can texture it. Green Stuff World makes these great stampers. These are good. They also make a textured rolling pin. You can use those as well. These are really great. These are quite inexpensive. They're good if you're making tiles, so this is another really great way to use Sculpy. But the way we're going to use for these bases is the simplest form, the one that all us foam crafters know, the good old-fashioned tin foil ball. Alright, and now got a pretty good texture there. So we're going to take this piece of Sculpy, we're going to go stick it in the oven, 275 for 15 minutes, and then we're going to let it cool, and then we're going to come back. So we've got our piece of Sculpy out from the oven. It's nice and hard and nice in texture. We got a great piece here. Now we're going to make a bunch of bases out of this. The nice thing about Sculpy is that you can cut it with your utility knife. It's very easy to work with. So all we gotta do is get the discs, our washers to attach to the back. So we just flip it over and we use a thin spot of hot glue on our washer and immediately drop it on while it's still hot. Once the glue is solid, you'll see they're on there firm. They're not coming away. The nice thing about the Sculpy, like I said before, it's soft. I used a pair of shears and I trimmed off that excess piece on the end. So you can just take your utility knife and separate them out. So cut one free. Get a nice textured base. You can be a little bit more aggressive and make it even more pitted or rocky. You can, using super glue, you can attach pebbles on it if you want more, or you can just use super glue and attach your figures directly to it. And then yeah, they just sit right on there. They prime up real well and they paint up really great. We've got our pre-painted mini, and we could do it with any mini. That's the beauty of this. We've got our basing material, it's done, it's ready to go. And now we're going to just add a little bit of flock. So what we do is we take some full strength Mod Podge and a wet brush, and we just put it on the base where we want the greenery or the static grass touches, or wherever we're putting on there, we just put it where we want it. Now we've got our flocking material. In this case, I'm using a large container of Woodland Scenics coarse turf. And then we're just going to shake off our excess back into our container. Alright, and now we want to lock it all in place. So we're going to take our 50-50 Mod and we're going to just use, you can use an eyedropper, I'm using pipettes, and you're going to flood the base. You're just going to give the whole base a nice flooded coating of this 50-50 mix. This will seep into the foam and make it hard. It'll make the whole thing lock down. The bubbles are going to pop when everything starts to dry. Just let this sit for 24 hours, and when you're done, it'll be rock hard and basically live forever. This is some finished examples. Here we've got our Han Solo-like figure. And this was a pre-based mini that we just put some grit and some flocking and then locked it all down, and it is perfect. Now we've dropped a little washer on the bottom just so it would stick to things if we're using magnetics. We'll talk about that in some other videos because we end up using magnets a lot. Now our middle figure here, this is one that we haven't painted it yet, but it's just a washer with the Sculpy right on top, textured. It's a nice piece, it's solid, we're ready for painting. Just haven't gotten around to it yet. Thirdly, we've got this Plug figurine, and this was a Miliput base. He had some discs around his feet that made a kind of a base, so we did Miliput. And again, the glue, the grit, and we actually touched up his base with some paint and whatnot, and it looks like a solid original piece. Doesn't take a lot of effort, but now these figures are a lot more appealing on the table. And that's what we're going for. So, Well, thank you here to my assistant who helped me do this in front of the camera. And a big thumbs up from Big D. Game on.